I love the music. The DJ is incredible.
The people are really awesome.
Headshot. Sit down. And do it. Pass out. Wake up. Hate it.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alchemix. This is the Alchemix channel where we like to do a lot of reviews of audio gear, DJ gear, and just be real honest, real transparent about the good and the bad and everything in between. So today we're going to be looking at an MPC Live. MPC is a name that's been around in this industry a long time. They were a huge part of the revolution in hip-hop in late 80s and early 90s. They got an awesome sample bank of sounds, and they just make really pro equipment that is great for music production. It's crazy to think how much modern music is now produced here on pad banks and equipment like this compared to being recorded live in the studio. Even if it is recorded live, a lot of times we chop it up on stuff like this to get a more modern sound. So let me tell you, the first time I saw one of these, I was at Guitar Center. I saw it on the used shelf, and as soon as I picked it up, it just feels so solid. It's weighted like crazy. It's got a very professional gear kind of feel to it. It has an almost rubber texture to the surface, and these pads they feel stiffer to me than the machine. Not a whole lot, but especially like when you hit them, it doesn't seem to give as much. Now, one of my favorite YouTubers, Accurate Beats, he did a review or a comparison between the two, and in one of them he says that these pads are more sensitive than the machine, and in another video he says that the machine pads are more sensitive than the MPC Live. So let me just say, stock out of the box, the MPC pads, they are not as articulate velocity sensitivity wise as the machine. It's something I know that there are settings I think you can adjust, and perhaps if you adjust it, maybe these pads can be more sensitive than the machine. But stock to stock, the machine definitely has more velocity sensitivity to it than the MPC. And I've heard some arguments for why either way is better. A lot of people say that with the MPC you don't have to hit as hard in order to get max volume and stuff. So depending on your style, how you produce, what you like to produce, that could be a pro or a con. I have not gotten in here and adjusted the sensitivity settings, so I can't tell you for sure whether or not these pads can actually be more articulate than a machine. But I knew pretty much as soon as I had touched one that I wanted one. The same way in the DJ world that I started out with MIDI controllers and cables and the need for a laptop, and then moved over to standalone gear because I preferred the stability of it. I felt myself heading in the same direction because I had many issues with machine where I'd connect it, everything's fired up and ready to go, and it's still just not able to connect to my controller for some reason. That kind of stuff is just really frustrating. So I went ahead and I ended up getting one of these. I was trying to get a Machine Micro and start making beats at work on my lunch breaks. And the guy offer up was just a total flake. And I'm actually grateful at this point because it encouraged me to hit this guy up about the MPC Live, and I love it. And I know that I probably would not have loved a Micro as much as I love this MPC Live. There's a big cost difference. I bought this used and I paid $740 for it. And I think that was a very good price. I got no complaints. If you look around, there's a bunch of people, I guarantee you, that buy these things and they're so frustrated with the learning curve that they're going to flip it for cheap pretty soon. So get yourself a low use MPC Live if you're going to get one. Save yourself a little money. The first impression I had when I could actually test it out, I put some speakers in the back of my van and I built a little mobile studio. As soon as I was playing with the sample banks, my first impression is, wow, that sounds really good. Like, I don't think the machine sounds bad, but there's something about the classic sounds of an MPC that was very appealing to my ears. I was very excited. I handed the dude his money, and he left. And then I became very concerned quickly. This is a real issue. A lot of people that I have done research are experiencing. I was having audio dropouts. I would be playing, and all of a sudden I'd have no sound. Sometimes I'd boot it up, and there'd be no sound, like right from the get-go. And the only way I could get the sound back was to do a full reset on the hardware. And obviously, when you just drop the price of a crappy used car on some DJ gear, some production gear, and it's not working the way it's supposed to, it's a very big concern. So I got very lucky. I did some updates. I deleted the previous user's content, and I have not had any issues with it since. It's been rock solid since I've done the update. I have had nothing but positive experiences with it since that. But I have heard that other people did the update and we're still experiencing audio dropouts. So that's something to be aware of. Everything that I bought this for, the stability of standalone and all that, at first I thought I was going to be screwed here. So definitely make sure you've updated your firmware. Make sure that you're doing it properly for the type of system that you're working with and stuff like that, because I got like Windows or Mac and other stuff. So make sure it's all up to date, and hopefully it's going to be a very stable piece of gear for you. I mean, I can drop money on like DJ gear and feel like right out the box, like, what the heck is this? There's a lot of hollowy plastic feeling like gear. Here's a DDJ 200. I love this rig. It's micro, it's super handy, it's lightweight, easy to carry, but it feels like if you dropped it down a flight of stairs, that there would be nothing but shards of plastic left to pick up. Where like this, I feel like I could drop it off the second story of a building onto concrete, pick it up, and keep on playing with the damn thing. It feels very, very solid. So one thing that I struggled with when I first got this bad boy is the touch screen audio interface. It is a little awkward, especially when you're selecting whole rows of notes and trying to delete or nudge stuff. It's definitely not as easy as a mouse click and drag and drop and stuff like that. It can feel a little bit archaic at first, but once you get good with it, it actually kind of pushes you to be a better producer, to try and make sure that you're closer to on beat so that you don't have to go in and like fix notes. And I'd say one of the biggest advantages this thing gave me is it really taught me how to make fuller beats like all at once. When you load it up, you get these pre-made sample banks. You can pick different genres. They're really handy. And it's laid out the same way most professional producers do it. You'll get a couple loops usually at the top. You'll get some atmospheric or some vocal chops here in the middle. And then down here we usually have our kicks, our snares, our hi-hats. And it kind of taught me to live perform more complete sounding beats. Whereas with Machine, I was doing each individual pattern at once and then layering them all together. And depending on what you're doing or your style, like either way is not necessarily wrong. If you're going to send this out to be mastered by somebody, they would probably prefer to have everything more isolated so that they can go back and restructure things as needed. But I am definitely coming from a DJ-based background. I like to do more live performance. Eventually, I'd like to incorporate this in to my turntables and maybe a 25-key keyboard and be able to do more live remixes and flipping and stuff like that in real time. So I'm really happy with this because it's really pushed me towards doing more on the fly, full flipping, and it's a lot of fun. I can say that sampling into this bad boy is not nearly as easy as Machine. It's very easy to get your sample into it. chopping it up and turning it into like a saved program that you can load up again and stuff. I struggled with that. That was not an easy process for me to figure out. In fact, I got it done once. I'm still not exactly sure how the heck I did it. I'm sure I would struggle with it again if I was trying to make a new flip. So I will say the machine is much easier to sample with. The machine is also much better when it comes to like full WAV files. Like I have a bunch of songs that are saved as WAVs, and on the machine I can drag and drop it onto any button and then start chopping it up any way I want to. It's that simple. Whereas with this, I tried to put all my WAVs onto a SD card, and when I open up the file, it can't recognize full WAV tracks and just let me start working with those. You have to sample it in, and then it will create it as its own WAV file that it recognizes. So that is definitely a bit of a disappointment. I will say I was hoping that I could chop up my songs just with this thing nice and easy, but you pretty much have to sample it in from an external source in order to get your samples here. So that's probably the biggest drawback I can say about this particular controller. When you get it fired up, it's fun to just load a sample bank if you're new to this and just play around with it. But like I said, the sounds are really impressive. It's so simple to get going, at least just making noises and stuff like that. It's a little more of a struggle to get your stuff laid out because it's different than a lot of other DAWs. But here's a couple tips that I struggled with. I don't want you guys to get caught up on. Let's say that you're in the grid mode. You can see this is all just a preformed track that came with the internal software. So we'll go to an unused track and we'll load something up. The easiest way I've found is you hold shift and you hit menu, and that brings you over to your browser with all your sounds. Now the drum kits are pretty easy to just load into a rack and start playing with. I struggled with this for way too long. If you load an instrument, any instrument at all, here's some bright pads. Now, when you first start hitting it, you end up getting samples that are so low, it's really not usable in your track. And what I didn't realize, took me way too long to figure out, each bank ascending is going to increase the octave. And usually about the fourth bank is where it's really in the range that it sampled it for you at. And you can go even higher if you hit shift and hit the bank. So that's just a quick tip to avoid frustrations there. You can use your instruments, but it's laid out a little bit differently. Another tip that I struggled with for way too long, this Q-Link over here has 4 different settings, and each of those has a different group of functions for these 4 rotary control knobs here. So get familiar with those quickly, because that's going to let you expand and shrink your grid. That's going to let you expand and shrink your loop within your grid. Going to help you like nudge everything and stuff like that. It's really handy to know those early on, be familiar with them, because a lot of the fumbling around you're going to do with the touch screen you can eliminate if you know what knobs do what in what mode. So that's something to early on get yourself very familiar with. So yeah, I love this thing. You can add in a full hard drive, like a SATA hard drive. You could put like a 500 gig in there. There's really just no limit to the creativity that you can do with this. Everything you have in a DAW, it's in here. Effects, here in the main menu, you can see you can increase the volumes of individual pads or full channels. You can pretty much set it up to have like full patterns playing, and then you can just press the pads to either add or eliminate certain elements of the track. There's so many different ways that you can perform with this, produce with this, live, or sample it out and export it as a WAV and keep working with it in a different DAW. It's such an awesome tool. But for me, like, the biggest appeal is just I have no excuse. Like, carrying this little case and my headphones around with me, it couldn't be more simple to make music at the park. I'm usually making it at Subway or Jack in the Box, or like, I take this with me all the time. A lot of people ask me questions about it. A lot of people are very interested in making music themselves and have never really seen a standalone production groove box like this. It's such a powerful tool for just eliminating the excuses. Like, I don't know why it's so much more work for me to add a laptop and a MIDI cable to my controller and stuff, but this, you just flick a switch, plug in your headphones, and boom, you're off making music like that. So I have nothing but positive things to say about this. A lot of DJ controllers that they made standalone over the last 4 or 5 years were very under-equipped in the processing power department. This has a multi-core processor. It really doesn't make the CPU sweat too much until you're adding in tons and tons of tracks and tons of effects and processing. I'm very impressed with the overall design, the function, the feel of the MPC Live. I doubt that I'll ever go back to Machine completely. I will never stop using Machine. That's my original producer language, and I absolutely love it. However, this makes it so easy to just get straight to it that I will probably always keep this as a part of my production workflow. And there's something to be said about it. There's only like 10 gigs of samples on this thing, but 10 gigs is a ton, especially when they're good quality samples. Whereas with Machine, I got the MK3 with like the full suite, and I had to upgrade the hard drive in my laptop from like 128 gig to a terabyte just so that I could hold the full library that comes with Machine. It's amazing how vast, how many samples, sounds, instruments, plugins that Machine has. However, to some degree, when you're new to this, when you're just getting started, it's almost detrimental to have more sounds than you could really properly listen to in a lifetime. It's sometimes nice to have a smaller base of audio to select from when you're getting started, to just kind of help you get right into the actual mechanics of producing music. So that's, again, depends on what you're doing, depends on where you're at, but I personally love what they brought to the table with this piece of gear here. I don't think I could live without it now. Like, everybody sees me carrying this around like my briefcase. I tell people when I'm clocking out for my lunch break that I'm clocking into my real job, and I enjoy it. Honestly, a day that I forget to bring this or something, like, I'm disappointed. Like, I feel like I'm missing out on something. There's just something so fun and functional and creative about what they put together here. So I hope you guys have found this informational, useful. I hope that if you're looking into this thing that you'll have a better idea of exactly what to expect when you do get it. I love you guys. I hope that you continue to make music in whatever form that you prefer to make it in. And if you're interested in learning a lot more about this, you own this and if you own this and you're currently struggling, you don't know where to start, you don't know how to get in deeper, you're frustrated, don't put it on OfferUp yet. Don't put it on Craigslist. Check out a YouTuber by the name of Matthew Stratton. He is, in my opinion, the most in-depth tutorials you can find on this piece of gear. It is not short. It is not few. He has broken it down into different episodes, and it is incredibly dense. You're going to want to take notes. You're going to want to have your MPC in front of you and following along and playing with these things hands-on. But Matthew Stratton, check him out if you're trying to get proficient with your MPC Live. He is, in my opinion, the best YouTube channel when it comes to MPC Live tutorials. So go ahead and shoot me a message, anything. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to help you out. And yeah, I appreciate you guys. Have a good day.